In this video, we'll be going over the continuation of the C#, C# video tutorials in .NET. So we'll be talking about storing class type objects in arrays and lists. So we're just going to be doing some notes. So I'll just start with that. So we'll be talking about storing basically class type objects. We've done this already if you're following the playlist on the channel, the C#.NET playlist. So we've done something similar. We've stored different kinds of objects, such as I think more than this, but we've done struct objects. We've stored struct objects in an array and a list. So now I'll be storing class objects. So storing class type objects in an array and list, or in arrays and lists. Okay, so objects that are instances of a class can be stored in an array. So remember, instance just means object. So you can store objects in an array. So an array is an object itself. So basically, an object within a data structure object. Because an array is a data structure, it can store data. It's a special kind of structure to store data. So for example, we could have so we could pretend that we have a class name, for example, like phone or something. So we could go constant int size. We can point size to like 5 or something. So here we can say that we have, let's assume that we have a cell phone class already. So let's just say cell phone. Cell phone array. So we can create an array of type cell phone. So we can go cell phone. So this is how we're storing. So to store an object array, you can remember to store something in an array in C#, it has to be the same type. So in most languages that's the same. For example, in Python you could store different types in an array, but in C# .NET you have to make sure they're the same type. So to store objects in an array, well, you'd have to first instantiate an array of that type. So you'd have to go, for example, cell phone. So you can go cell phone array. We'd call it cell phone, and we could point it to new, and then we'll call cell phone here. Then here we can pass an array. So we'll go cell phone of array index size here. So we're instantiating a cell phone array of 5 different indexes. So here we can go phone, or sorry, not phone. We can go cell phone of array index 0 points to, for example, so in this case you'll have to instantiate a new object. So you have to go new cell phone. It's a little bit tricky, but if you've done other languages before, it's the exact same thing. For example, in Java, so we'll just go cell phone here of array index 1 points to new cell phone. So this is basically data structures, because an array is a data structure. But in each index we're instantiating pretty much a new cell phone object. So this is a new cell phone object, or cell phone object like that. And this is also a new cell phone object. So every time you want to store an object, unless you have a cell phone object itself. So there's other ways to do this. I'm pretty sure you could just go. So I'm pretty sure it should make sense if you just have an object on the side. So you could go like cell phone. If you could assume that you already have an object, so like cell phone, we just go like cell phone, or I don't know, blue cell phone. Points to new cell phone. Sorry, can't type today. So we have cell phone. This is gonna be wrong. Actually, no, so that should be right. Cell phone, blue cell phone points to new cell phone. And then this takes the parameters. Okay, so then now we could go, for example, this should work. We could just test it out. We'll probably test doing this. We'll be doing this later on as well. But we could say cell phone of array index 2 points to blue cell phone. That should work because it's the same type. So you can also use a loop to step through the array. So we've done this before. Oh, okay, so to instantiate objects. Okay, so you could do this as well. I don't think we've actually done this exact example. So for int I points to 0, and you could say int, or you could say I is less than. We could say cell phone dot length, and then we could say I++, so just your standard for loop, and then here you could just say we could go, for example, cell phone. Let's say we're referencing this array that we already created. Then we could go cell phones, or cell phone of, I probably should have called it phones, but that's okay. So we could say cell phone of array index I points to new cell phone. So you can instantiate an object like that. That's a little advanced, but it works. If you really need to instantiate many, like tons of objects, that would work. So initializing array elements. So you can initialize the array elements in the declaration statement. So you can use an initialization list, I guess. So we could create another cell phone array here. So cell phone array, we could just call it phones or something. Phone points to an initialization list. Then we could say that we want new cell phone. This one's a little tricky. So new points to a new cell phone like that. So each index is going to be a new object, pretty much. Okay, so cell phone array, phone points to an initialization list, where we pass in new cell phone, comma new cell phone. You could add several of them, new cell phone. And you could add another one here, for example, new cell phone. And you could just close the list when you're done with a semicolon. So you can also initialize an array and assign its elements with references to a class. Okay, so remember that, actually I don't think you'd remember this, but if you're watching the whole series, so if you want to actually, if you've seen the first part of this video, it'll be in the playlist C#, so csharp.net playlist on my channel. So we created a bank account constructor, where we had, for example, I've deleted it, but we had, for example, like the bank account constructor takes a value. So we could just assume that here. We could go, we could say that we have, for example, bank account. We could say that it's an array. We could call it accounts. Then we could say points to an initialization list like that. And then we could say that we have a new bank account that takes, for example. So these are array indexes, remember that. I know it's a little tricky because we're not, like you might be thinking, okay, these are different objects and we're naming them something different. That's not the case. This is one array object where we're creating indexes. So basically, it's like an object, it's like one object name with many different indexes that are just referenced by the same name by index number, so it's a little confusing. So bank account array so it's one object with like an array of pretty much, it's like the same object with many indexes. It's a little tricky to understand. We'll be doing some examples coming up. So bank account array accounts. I'd rather not use an initialization list. It seems to be a little trickier. Like, I'd rather go with this. So here, for example, cell phone points to new cell phone. So here we go. In this cell phone index of array index 0, we're going to instantiate a new cell phone. But in this case, it's kind of the same, well, it is the same thing, where we have, it's just one cell phone array that can store cell phone objects. Well, in this case, it's just having an index to point to a new cell phone. Like, I mean, it's not like here where we created blue cell phone and then stored a blue cell phone object in that array. So you can use them in different ways. This way is kind of tricky because you're like, well, it's not a different object, it's the same one. We're just kind of we're just storing the same object in different indexes. So yeah, so we'll do some examples on why we do that. So new bank account, here we could pass in, for example, let's just say it took a parameter, so we could pass it a parameter. And then in the next index we could do the same thing with a different parameter. You could say that these objects, for example, so in this case, this object takes a parameter. So in this case, each account object index basically has a different value. So it's a little confusing. It's like it's like one object with many different indexes that you can store different values in. It's kind of confusing. But on a university test, you will get asked to instantiate an object array for sure. That's always a question. Okay, so here, new bank account. Then here we'll pass in, for example, 3,000. And here we'll go new bank account, and then we'll pass in, for example, 4,000. So that could continue on to whatever, till you're done. So we'll just close the initialization list with a semicolon. Okay, so moving on, so we'll come back to this. This is just an intro to these notes. We're going to be doing some more notes and examples, some labs later on. So pretty much just the labs where we'll get to practice these concepts. So that won't be in this video. That'll be in a video coming up on the channel, like in the playlist, the C# playlist. So we could also go over lists of class type objects. So let's just go up here for a sec. So lists of class type objects. So you can create a list to hold a class object. So we could assume that we're still using the cell phone class. So how do we do this? Well, we just go, for example, list of object type cell phone, just like that. Then we go list. Or we could go, for example, phone list, points to new list, and then here we'll pass in of type object cell phone. Just like that. We'll have empty parentheses and close it because our list doesn't take any parameters. This statement creates a list object referenced by the phone list variable. Each object of the cell phone class needs an instance of cell phone to hold the data. So each object of the cell phone class needs an instance of cell phone. So pretend that we had a cell phone class that had, for example, fields, which we've discussed in the previous videos. Should be the video, maybe not the last video, but the second last video, or a few videos before this one. So we could assume that we had a class named cell phone with different fields. So for example, we could go, okay, let's just instantiate an object normally. So let's just say that we have a cell phone cell phone points to new cell phone, like that. Just a normal object, no arrays or lists. Then we'll just go phone dot. We could just say brand points to, for example, I don't know, we could just go with like Bell. So that could be a string, and then here we could have, for example, phone dot. So we could say phone dot model points to, I don't know, BlackBerry. Then here we could go, for example, we could go phone dot price. We could just go that it's like, I don't know, 200 bucks. Actually, it shouldn't be a string, but you could store it as a string if you want. We'll pretend that it's an int. We'll say that we have two strings and an int. So now we could access our list. So this is what I showed you guys before in the array. So you could do this. This makes more sense. To me personally, this would make more sense, unless you have some reason to instantiate an array, an object array with different values. If I had to use an object array, I might use this. I can't think of a reason why I do that, but you might need one at some point. Maybe you wanted to store your user data as user objects in an array with different values. That might make sense, but then you wouldn't really want to use an array because it wastes space. You have to instantiate a certain amount of elements, so you may want to use a list for that. So in that case, for example, so we could say that we have, to add the cell phone object to the list, then we could go, we'll access our phone list. So we'll say phone list dot, and we'll access the add method. Then here we could add, for example, phone. Phone list dot add phone. So it's pretty simple. That's pretty much it. So we just added the cell phone object to the list. So we referenced our phone list list of type cell phone objects. Since the types are the same of type cell phone, then we just go phone list dot add, and we just add the phone to the list because it's the same type, so it'll work. Okay, so we'll just go over a little bit of theory stuff. So we're going to move on from lists and arrays. So finding the classes of their, actually we might just come back to this in a minute. So probably just end the notes here. So thanks for watching. We'll continue the notes in the next video just because we're moving on to another topic here. So thanks for watching, guys. If you guys like the video, you can like and subscribe to support the channel for more programming and investing tutorials. So in the next video, we'll be talking about finding the classes, or finding basically the classes and their responsibilities in a program. So it's just some theory stuff on classes. So hopefully I'll see you guys there. If you like the video, you can like and subscribe to support the channel for more programming and investing tutorials. Check out the C# playlist or other languages, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Take care.